Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Legislative Commission's third meeting of the calendar year for 2025. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll? Oh, Greg made it on.
Senator Daly.
Here.
Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Neal. Here. Senator Wen.
Here.
Senator Scheibel.
Here.
Senator Titus.
I'm here.
Assemblymember Bacchus.
Present.
Assemblymember Hafen.
Here.
Assemblymember Hansen.
Here.
Assemblymember Watts.
Here.
Assemblymember Yeager.
Here.
And Chair Howdiggy.
Present. Thank you. And we have Senator Neal attending today for Senate Majority Leader Canizaro. So all members are present. We have a quorum. And before we begin, just a quick housekeeping. If anyone here would like copies of the Commission's agendas, minutes, or reports, you may be added to our mailing list by following the links on the Legislature's website. Contact information for staff is also listed on the Legislature's website. In addition, we accept written comments that may be emailed, mailed before or during or after the meeting. The information regarding where to send written comments is also located on the agenda for today's meeting. Item number 2, let's go ahead and move to public comments. There will be 2 periods for public comment. We will take one at the beginning of the meeting. We will take one at the end of the meeting as well. Public comment can be made here in person or by telephone. We do ask that anybody who wishes to give public comment identifies themselves and please spells their name for our secretaries. We do ask that everyone here in person signs in by the clipboard at the door. And we will start with public comment down here in Las Vegas, then move to public comment in Carson City, then take public comment on the phone. Is there anyone here in Las Vegas wishing to give a public comment? Please approach the witness table. Thank you for joining us. Please hit your mic button, state your name and spell it for our secretary, and begin giving your public comment.
Hello, my name is Estee Paget. That's E-S-T-E-E, last name P-A-D-G-E-T-T. I am here to speak on the behalf of the Nevada families affected by the GTL prison phone and video call system and the lack of a chaplain at High Desert State Prison. For months, families have struggled with dropped calls, failed video visits, and charges for connections that only last a few seconds. These are not small inconveniences. They are our lifeline for our families to have to stay connected with our loved ones on the inside. Yet Nevada continues to allow GTL to profit from unreliable services. Only one prison in Nevada offers free calls. While the charges are high and inconsistent rates, meanwhile, California has passed Senate Bill 1008, making all inmate calls free statewide, because they recognize that communication supports rehabilitation, not profit. Nevada families deserve the same fairness and transparency. At the same time, High Desert State Prison continues to deny marriages and requests, not for disciplinary reasons, but simply because there is no chaplain on site. This has been going on for months, and it violates our basic constitutional right under Turner versus Safely, which guarantees inmates' right to marry. I'm just asking that these issues are please reviewed. Thank you so much. This affects real families, real lives, and the integrity of our correctional system. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. And if you are both going to give public comment, please feel free to fill in the chairs. Thank you so much for joining us. When you're ready, just hit your mic button, state your name and spell your name, and you can begin your public comment.
Hello, my name is Gisette Everfeld, J-A-Z-Z-E-T-T. Last name Everfeld, E-V-E-R-F-I-E-L-D. Excuse me. I want to thank you guys for your time, and please try to understand our frustration. The tablets were supposed to alleviate some stress. Instead, they came with mounting issues, static phone calls, drop calls, fragile earphones, high prices, only to leave some of us with the ability to not hear from our loved ones at all. I had to purchase another phone with another company just to be able to speak with my loved one, to be able to encourage him through these constant lockdowns, 4 to 5 days at a time. During this time, we found out there were classes on the tablet to be taken. He's taken these classes with the hopes that these are counted towards something, only to find out that they're not. I don't understand what the rehabilitation is, the state is doing about the rehabilitation. It's like stuff is given to them and then it's taken away. What are they supposed to do? They are caged like animals all the time and expected to act normal. What is it that you want them to do? Things can only change if you guys help change the system. The system is flawed ridiculously. They cannot be different if they're caged down like this all day with nothing to do. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. We can take the next public comment.
Hello. My name is Kalae Griffith, Kalae Griffith, Griffith. And I'm here today to also speak in reference to the GTL Viapath's recent rate increases that are not only unfair, they're exploitative. When phone calls were 90 cents for 15 minutes, I already had to budget carefully to stay in contact with my husband. But now at $1.50 per call, excuse me, that's a 66.67% increase overnight for the exact same service. No added benefit, no improvement in connectivity or call quality, just more money out of my pocket. Additionally, we pay 60 cents to send our loved ones 30-second videos, and only 9 seconds of those are delivered to our loved ones. So should we expect a 42-cent refund for videos that are cut short? Of course not, because it's not about doing the right thing. In the first month that the tablets were introduced, I paid nearly $400 in calls alone. $400 just to talk to my husband. That's a car payment, that's groceries, that's rent money. But I did it because communication keeps him grounded and it keeps hope alive. Now I'm being forced to cut those calls down because the cost has become unbearable, and it doesn't stop there. Offenders are charged 5 cents per minute just to search for a movie, not watch it, just to scroll and look. That's not innovative. That's price gouging and plain and simple. Viapath claims these services are about rehabilitation and connection, but their prices tell a different story. That tells me that their priority is profit, not people. They are capitalizing on isolation, desperation, and on the love that families like mine refuse to give up on. This isn't just a few extra dollars, it's about basic human decency. Families shouldn't have to choose between staying connected and keeping the lights on. Communication is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. Every dollar I spend on these inflated call rates and fees is a dollar I can put towards rent, food, or other basic necessities. Yet I continue to do everything I can to maintain communication because staying connected reduces recidivism, strengthens family bonds, and promotes hope and stability. I'm asking you to regulate these prices and fees so that Viapath must stop taking advantage of Nevada impacted families who are already carrying more than their share of pain and burden. Please encourage them to reconsider lowering rates, ending hidden fees, and start honoring the humanity of the people you claim to serve. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Hocking, and I'm here as the Executive Director of Return Strong, an organization who represents incarcerated people, formerly incarcerated people and their families in Nevada. I want to speak, well, first I want to say that I did submit a letter, which hopefully you saw this morning, that goes into depth about the issues with the Viapath contract. But today for my comment, I would like to speak about the overwhelming need for you to hear the other side of the story when making decisions about what happens inside Nevada prisons. Every session, issues like the Viapath contract and tablets, carceral nutrition, homicides, drugs in the mail, correctional abuse, programming, and parole all come before you. And every session, those decisions are made with information that only comes from the system itself, from NDOC. We know that your intentions are good and we believe that, but once laws are passed and implementation begins, the problems start. Families can't receive calls, tablets fail, costs skyrocket, and oversight disappears. Those most affected, the people living inside and their families, are left to deal with the fallout of choices made without their voices at the table. Only one person in the legislative body has lived inside of Nevada prisons. That matters. Prisons are not the same as jail or law enforcement. They are closed worlds with complex dynamics that few truly understand. Without hearing from people who know those realities firsthand, even well-intended reforms can go wrong. Return Strong specializes in Nevada prisons. We collect data, we document lived experience, and we bring forward solutions that can prevent these unintended consequences. We're not here to criticize. We're here to help you ask the right questions before decisions are made and to build real accountability afterward. So please meet with us. We'll meet with you individually. We'll bring your constituents. We want to meet and talk with you before decisions are made and ask you to listen before you legislate. Because when you hear the full story, we can work together to make Nevada prisons safer, more humane, and more accountable for everybody.
Thank you for your testimony. And Ms. Hawking, could you please spell your first and last name for our secretary? Oh, would you turn on your mic?
JODIHOCKING. And 5 years later, I still can't get that right. I mean, I got my name right. I forget to tell you.
We appreciate you being here. Thank you. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas? Please come up and fill the seats if you would like to give public comment.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Teresa Yancey Benson. That's THERESA. Last name YANCY-Benson. I'm the Executive Director of the Clemency Project of Nevada, a new participatory defense organization that assists with sentence commutation applications. I'm here to express my deep concern over the recent increases in fees by GTL for phone calls, tablet use, and video visits. These hikes represent an undue financial burden on families who are already facing the emotional and economic hardships of having loved ones incarcerated. For many families, maintaining contact with their incarcerated individuals and our loved ones is essential for preserving relationships, supporting rehabilitation, and promoting successful reentry. Yet the exorbitant fees imposed by GTL make even basic communication nearly impossible, especially for those who cannot afford to pay. What was already a challenging and painful situation is now further compounded by what can only be described as predatory pricing and highway robbery at the expense of the most vulnerable. I urge this commission to take immediate action to investigate these fees, protect families from financial exploitation, and ensure that communication with incarcerated loved ones remains accessible and affordable. The well-being of our families, communities, and the prospects for successful reentry definitely depend on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else in Las Vegas wishing to give public comment? Okay, we will go to Carson City. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give public comment? Okay, seeing none. AVH, can we check the telephone lines?
Thank you, Chair. If you would like to participate in public comment today, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits 009, please press star 6 to unmute yourself and you may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Legislative Commission. My name is Eric Smith, ERICSMITH. I'm a journalism student at Northwestern University and resident with the Fines and Fees Justice Center. We have submitted a letter for your review pertaining to the implementation of the tablet program with the Nevada Department of Corrections. I'm going to share with you some key points of concern. The regulation, which was passed in 2024, stipulated a variety of options for how incarcerated individuals would be able to use the tablets, notably including the purchase of bulk entertainment minutes at 1 cent a minute and the availability of subscription services for $19.99. Nevada is one of the last 2 states in the nation to roll out a tablet program within its prisons, and many, including those that use Viapath like us, provide this option. The current rate of phone calls has just increased last week, and the going price per minute of entertainment feature usage is 5 cents per minute. This is egregiously high. The cost for a premium subscription to Spotify is $12 a month. Netflix is a little higher, $18 a month, which comes out to $216 a year. The cost to watch 1 2-hour movie a day in Nevada correctional facilities is $6 a day, or $2,190 a year. This is more than 10 times the rate of the Netflix subscription. That $216 would be gone in 36 days. We've been talking to people who are incarcerated as well as reviewing the implementation of tablets in other states. While the ability to connect with loved ones to the tablets has been life-changing for many people and families, the aforementioned concerns are part of our larger apprehension about the tablet program becoming a method of constant financial extraction that both VIAPAP and the NDOC can wield over those who are incarcerated in Nevada. Our contact information is on the letter that we have submitted, and we are happy to meet and discuss this further. We hope that you will all review the document and the tablet program itself with scrutiny. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for your
There are no
testimony,
fur-
ABH.
Excuse me. There are no further callers wishing to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you so much, ABH. Again, I will remind everyone that there is a period for second public comment at the end of our meeting. With that, we will move on to our third agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from the August 19th, 2025 meeting. Commission members, you have in your packet the draft minutes for our meeting. These draft minutes are also available on the legislature's website. Is there any discussion regarding the minutes that you have in front of you?
Move to approve.
Okay, seeing none, I have a first from Speaker Yeager. Is there a second? I have a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you. And now we will go into agenda item number 4, which has 2 parts today. There is a regulation for early review relating to the practice of optometry, followed by the review of administrative regulations. Our legislative counsel, Asher Killian, is with us today to assist us with these items. So I will hand it over to him. Before I hand it over to our counsel, I do want to let everyone know that we are going to take the regulations in 2 portions today. We're going to start with the review of the early review of the administrative regulation, and then we will go into the review of our regular administrative regulations. So we will move into agenda item 4A. This is the one regulation that is submitted for an early review pursuant to NRS 233B.0681. That section provides for the early review of a proposed permanent regulation after the agency has given notice of a hearing on that regulation, but before the hearing is held. If the Legislative Commission approves the regulation under this early review section and the permanent regulation adopted after the agency's hearing is identical to the regulation submitted for early review, the Legislative Council is required to promptly file the regulation with the Secretary of State and notify the agency of the filing. If the regulation adopted by the agency is not identical to the one submitted for early review, the regulation must come back to the Legislative Commission for approval in the same manner as if the early review had not occurred. A copy of R 049-25, the regulation submitted for early review, is posted on the Nevada Legislature's website under the tab for this morning, which you will find by hitting the button in the upper right-hand corner of the homepage that says Scheduled Events. I do believe we have someone from the Nevada State Board of Optometry here to answer any questions we might have. ABH, do we have someone on the telephone line or on Zoom from the State Board of Optometry?
Yes, this is Adam Schneider, Executive Director, ADAMSCHNEIDER.
Thank you for being here. Commission members, does anyone have any questions regarding the early review regulation? Does anyone in Carson City have any questions?
No questions up here.
Okay, seeing no questions in Carson City, seeing no questions down here in Las Vegas. Assemblymember Hafen, do you have any questions? Okay, then do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
I have a first from Speaker Yeager. Do I have a second? I have a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Okay, the motion is approved. Okay, next we will move into the second portion of agenda item number 4. Members, there are 21 regulations that were submitted for approval pursuant to NRS 233B-067 and NRS 233B-0675. These regulations are all contained in the binder provided to the members and also posted on the legislature's website under the tab for this meeting. There is also a public copy of the notebook on the sign-in table at each meeting location. At this time, I will ask commission members if there are any regulations to be held for further discussion. Once we identify those regulations, we will take a motion to approve the remaining regulations. Then we will come back to the held regulations for discussion. I do know that we do have some commission members who do have regulations to be pulled. I'm going to go ahead and start in Carson City and ask Senator Daley to go over the regulations that he would like pulled.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have 6 total. So R016-24, R149-24, R003-25, R008-25, R0022-25, R025-25, and then finally R057-24.
Commission members, are there anyone else who would like regulations pulled? We can stay up in Carson City. Senator Daley, do you see anyone with regulations to be pulled?
Yes, we have Senator Hansen, and I believe Senator Titus have regulations.
Okay, Senator Hansen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. R013-25 and R024-25 will be mine.
Madam Chair, if you're ready, Senator Titus here.
Senator Titus, we're ready.
Thank you. I think my colleagues have covered, I had 5, but I think 3 of them have already been mentioned, but I'm going to go over my list just to make sure we don't miss anything. R016-24, I believe has already been requested. R149-24 has been requested. I think the one that hasn't been is R180-24. And then R057-24, and I believe R024-25 has already been requested. Thank you.
057. R024-25. Okay, committee members, is there anyone else in Carson City wishing to pull regulations? Okay, Assembly Member Hafen, I see your hand raised. Why don't we go to you next?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know if R25-25 needs to be pulled, but I would like to make a disclosure. If it's okay with you, I'll make the disclosure here.
Yeah, it was pulled.
But 25-25 was pulled. Thank you, Chair. I'll make the disclosure then.
Okay, thank you, Assembly Member Hafen. Members, does anyone in Las Vegas have regulations to be pulled? Okay, it does not look like anyone has further regulations to be pulled. Just to go over the list as I have it, I have R016-24, R149-24, R180-24, R003-25, R008-25, R013-25, R022-25, R024-25, R025-25, and R057-24. And I believe I left one off. We also pulled R190-24. We are going to withdraw R190-24. Okay, and with that, I would be looking for a motion to approve the remaining regulations.
I would so move to approve the remaining regulations that have not been pulled for discussion.
I have a first from Speaker Yeager, a second from Senator Nguyen. Will those members in favor of the motion please say aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. The motion is approved. Okay, thank you so much for those of you who came to answer questions on your regulation. If your regulation was just approved, now's the time you can sneak out. We will give you all a few seconds. Okay, thank you, everyone. Let's go ahead and get back to our regulations that have been pulled for further discussion. I will take them in order, and we can start with regulation R01624A. I believe we had a couple members who were requesting to pull that regulation. So if we could have someone from the Comstock Historic District Commission, please approach the table to help answer questions from the committee members. And I believe both of our members who requested this item pulled are in the north, so we will go ahead and turn it over to our commission members to ask their questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Titus said I can go. I can go first. Maybe you guys can answer this question, just come on my concerns. And I have this with two other at least regulations. In section 10, where you guys reference the interiors, the Secretary of the Interior standards for treatment of historic properties set forth in 36 CFR, et cetera. Just before that, you say in addition to what's in NRS that needs to be considered by the district, and I understand you're changing the lines. I don't have any issues with that. But my concern is, and I'm going to ask this question every time we're going to reference federal regulations, is is theirs different than ours? Does it add criteria that you have to consider? If there's a conflict between state and federal, which one are you going to follow? So here's my concern, and I'll just spell it out a little bit, is what we've seen with other federal guidelines and various things on this stuff is they seem to change quite a bit recently under the current administration, and for a variety of reasons, some justified in my mind, some that are not. So I wouldn't want a federal regulation standard that you're supposed to consider that gets changed or lowers the standard or threshold or lowers the criteria and says we don't have to follow this, and then have somebody in Nevada say, well, you've got to consider this federal regulation, and this federal regulation says I do it even though it's clearly in violation or would be outside the standards in the state. So I just have a problem going with that federal regulation without saying as it exists today, right? So if they change it later, we're still stuck with the standards now. If they're appropriate and they're reasonable and they add to what we're doing, I'm fine. But we've just seen too many things. I don't want the standard to be how the East Wing was treated in the demolition of that. Argue it back and forth on whether it was historic or not and all the rest of that stuff. No permits, no permission, sue me if you don't like it, and it's too late now, it's gone. Too late now. And I just don't know how that's going to mesh out with what we've seen And then how can we rely, or should we rely on the federal regulation?
Thank you, Senator. My name is Arthur Krupicz. That's Krupicz. I serve as the State Historic Preservation Officer here in Nevada, and we have two of our Comstock Commission members with us today as well, and I will let both of you or either of you speak to this. But in general, yeah, you raise a good point. The generally across the country, local regulations do follow federal regs, and there is certainly, as you say, a concern about those regs changing. But I'll just establish that at the outset, that there is, locals tend to follow the feds. They've been around since 1966, and yeah, that is always something that locals are having to grapple with for sure. I may defer to either of our commission members in terms of the degree to which these specific regulations are aligned with, or we up at the Comstock, how much we are aligned with federal regulation. But generally, it's fairly close. We stay close to the federal regs. Do either of you have anything to add to that?
My name is Joe Curtis, C-U-R-T-I-S, first name Joe, J-O-E. I am the chairman of the Comstock Historic District Commission and have served in that position for, I don't know how many years, a whole bunch. The way we've always have treated these regulations as they are actually function as guidelines. And as we have different historic districts within the state, the vast majority of them are controlled or overseen by those Department of Interior regulations and guidelines. And each of those historic districts have unique aspects to each one of them, depending upon where they are and the geographical setting of what they're in and the period of time that they were developed in or built in. So we have to be able to move kind of, lack of a better word, kind of bob and weave with some of the stuff sometimes. So they're not hardcore regulations that we have to we have significant guidelines, so they must meet. The way we try to do it is that our particular area, the buildings and the constructions are in such a fashion that we want to try to match those particular buildings and structures that are within our particular historic district. So we do also have to go by building codes. We have to go by federal regulations that might be out there, but we look and see how can we accomplish what we need to do in terms of visual aspects of the building that is involved, or the whatever it is that we're dealing with from the historical standpoint. And how can we do that and still meet the regulations? So a lot of it is making sure that the applicant is able to understand the needs of the historic district, as well as the needs of that they have with wanting to build a facility, a building, a home, what have you. So we work well with the guidelines that we receive from the Department of Interior, and we work well with the local building departments and the formal building codes that are within our district. Does that, to some degree, answer your question, or was I way off?
No, thank you. I mean, it does, yes, but I don't think it gets to the core of what I was trying to look for. So I understand the federal regulations, and they may overlap with what the state has, but the federal rules or guidelines then become the minimum. The state can have higher standards or have additional thresholds. Can't be less than what the feds have, for instance, with OSHA or water quality, et cetera. So the feds will set a standard. The state can have a higher standard. Feds say you can have this much mercury in the water, and the state can say, no, you have to have even less than that. But if the feds say this is the minimum, the state can't have a higher level. Same thing with OSHA. Fall protection starts at 6 feet. We can't say that you have fall protection at 10 because that would be in violation of the federal regulation. But we could say it starts at 4 feet, right? So what I'm trying to get to is, if we're referencing these regulations, and in light of some other issues we've had, look at COVID or vaccination standards and various things where the feds have changed the rules. And I'm just saying, so if the Department of Interior, however, relax the standard and say it's much easier now to tear down whatever building it might be, and these considerations that were in place are no longer there, whether they match up with state law or not, which one would prevail? I think the higher standard if the state standard is higher. But I think it creates an argument for a person to come in and say, well, you have to consider these federal regulations, and these federal regulations say I can do this. And it just creates, if they don't match, then we're screwed. And you're going to end up in litigation, and some judge is going to decide some issue, because they're going to say, you have to consider the federal regulation, and it's different than what the state is. It's less restrictive, so I want to be able to do it. And if you tell them no, then you're going to get sued. Unless we have our rules that say this is what it is going to be in the state, either we're going to adopt these regulations as they exist today, or if there's a conflict, the state law, if it's more restrictive, would prevail, because you can have a higher standard than the feds go. And there might be there's better issues when we come up on different regulations that illustrate this same issue. But if you follow what I'm saying is, I understand you're working well today, and what happens when it doesn't. And we've seen some of these issues creep up in other areas across the country, and they're causing issues in the state, and it's a concern for me, and I'm not really too keen on adopting any federal regulation by standard unless we can say it works for us, it's a reasonable standard, and we're going to adopt them as they exist today if we believe they're reasonable today. Then that way, if changes, you got to come back to the Legislative Commission, you got to change your regulation if the federal standard changes negatively and you want to go to that lower standard. You'd have to pass it here. So the way it is now, I just don't think you have safeguards in there, and I don't think I can support it without addressing that issue.
My name is Julie Workman, and it's Julie Workman, Workman. I've been on the Comstock Historic District Commission as a commissioner for Lyon County since 2004. We began trying to update these regulations about 20 years ago, and it has come before it got into a committee, and then I'm not sure what happens after that. But we had many open meeting laws with the meetings to change these regulations with the people who lived in the Dayton, Silver City, Gold Hill, Virginia City area, Story County, and Lyon, working together. The reason why we wanted to do an update 20 years ago was that they included things like the people had to be notified by telegraph. So there was a really old wording in there. And the way that just setting it up, the commission, they had like treasurers and different parts in there that were just not applicable to how this commission runs. So the idea of having this regulations change was not to deal with the concerns that you have are very real, Senator Daley. But the whole point of this, even 20 years ago, was to make the map correspond with the words that were described. So our maps and the words describing the area were different. So at that time, we really were concerned with, the people's right. Well, here in the wording, it says I'm not in the district. Here in the map, it says I am in the district. So the whole point of redoing these regulations was not to get into anything more than just making clarity, and it's worked really well the way Joe has said, that we work on a person-by-person basis, building-by-building basis, or whatever, if it's going to be renovated, if it's a new building, and trying to keep up those high standards that we have in our historic districts around the state. And the reason why is that these are really important historical areas that we have in the Comstock district. And we don't want, anything to make it less. But because of the way it is written, we really wanted to get an updated version. So really the idea of regulation changing was not to change what is good and bad. That's pretty well written out in our guidelines. But the intent of our district is to keep up historical information and available to people who live there or who are moving there, and so that they understand this is what's required. And then also, really important, mostly, was to get our maps and the written word descriptions so they collate. And then we have 2 counties, so it's really important that both counties are on the same page with this. And for years, decades actually, we've worked really well together with Story and Lyon County and in the Comstock District. We really just wanted to update the language and make it relevant for today. So are there any more questions for that?
And thank you. And I, did you want to go ahead? Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Senator, but thank you, Julie and Joe. And we do appreciate your concern about making this regulation flexible, if I can frame your words that way, building in a flexibility for the future. Point taken, absolutely. Thank you.
Well, in addition to the flexibility, we want it to be not less than the standards we have to now, not less than the standards that we've been able to rely on and with the federal partners in the past. And from what I've seen, at least, I don't know that we have that reliable, stable partnership, because things change for a variety of reasons that aren't really justified sometimes. For instance, you could have some gold mine facility or whatever come in and say, hey, we want to do this, and they make a big contribution or compliment our commander-in-chief, right? Say, well, we're gonna make a contribution to your presidential. I was going to say palace, but your presidential palace or ballroom, whatever it is. So then they say, hey, well, yeah, we'll get rid of these regulations for you that are stopping as it is, and so if we can't. And I understand you got to change the maps. You guys can amend this regulation, go back, like we've done several times before. But I'm uncomfortable having any open-ended set of standards that we're referencing that can be changed. And I'll give another example, right? Until recently, right, the NVIDIA microchip, right, was considered a national security risk to sell it to China. That recently changed. It's not a national security risk anymore now that the government and our president's got a deal where, we're getting part of the money. So now it's okay to sell those chips to China. It was a national concern for decades, not anymore. And I'm just saying those are the type of deals and justifications to make these changes that I'm just not comfortable with. So change your maps, but you got a part in here that is, in my view, too much of a risk.
Thank you, Senator. The preservation community is certainly concerned about shifting law and guidance for sure. Thank you.
If I might, Madam
Thank
Chair.
you, Senator Daly. Yes, ready for you.
Senator Daly, is good for me to ask a question? All right, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, certainly, first and foremost, Mr. Curtis and Ms. Workman, I want to thank you for your decades of dedication to preserving the history of Nevada. I, too, am very passionate about that, having founded the Smith Valley Historical Society, so I get all the hours that goes into this. I do have a number of questions, if I might, Madam Chair. First, how many commissioners are there on this commission for the Historic District?
Again, Joe Curtis for the record. There are 9 members, and all of the members are appointed by the governor's office, of course.
So 9 members, and so what the specific regulations that are in front of us changes. You had a board and of the executive directors or the officers, and you're eliminating, at the very first section, you're eliminating the secretary and treasurer, and you're assigning the secretary duties to somebody that then you're appointing, who is not a member of the commission. You don't collect any money, so there's no need for a treasurer, right? You don't have an account, right? And then the secretarial duties are going to be done by somebody you've hired, correct? So that's the first thing that changes. The next thing I want to clarify is what you're trying to straighten out is the difference in the maps versus what the wording is on the actual sections. And on page 11, number 3, it says that if there's a conflict, which you've already mentioned, between the map included in subsection 1 and the description of the boundaries of the historic district or the map are the ones that prevail. And I do have some concerns about that. I mean, as a history person, I collect old books, I collect old maps. I have an old map from early 1600s that has California as an island. And so it's not accurate, but it's a very wonderful map. So I worry when you go based off the map and not a legal description, GPS section, those kind of things on the markings. And so can you clarify me how you came up with a map that if you look at these things, you have the old map on page 9, which isn't really very, it's hard to tell what that is. And then the maps on page 10. And I worry that you're going to base all decisions based on those 2 maps. And you have a better map that has very distinct GPS coordinates so that it's very clear, or because an overlay of the drawings, in my mind, wouldn't be what I'd go off of.
Joe Curtis for the record. Thank you, Senator Titus. Excellent question. Yes, we go by the metes and bounds of where the description says. So if you are building a house and you the left northeast corner of your house happens to be over that metes and bounds into the district, that would create a problem that would have to be worked out. We go by the specific metes and bounds of the description, not by a visual map on a piece of paper.
But if I might follow up, Madam Chair, just for clarity, it says that if a conflict occurs between the map included in subsection 1 and the description, the boundaries of the district is set forward by the map should prevail. So that's different than what you were saying.
I think that's one of the things that we have wanted to clear up, because it does conflict. We run into a number of conflicts within the old regulations of how it actually works and that sort of thing. As an example, we just had that exact problem come up with a housing complex in Lyon County that is near the Sutro Tunnel. And we've worked with the building contractor to get that clarified. So it wasn't a matter of the map, it was a matter of what's metes and bounds. But to further answer your question or your comment about having like GPS markings for each one, that has not been done to my knowledge. We go by what is the legal description of the section.
Having said that, what you're proposing is going to remove that and go back to the map. And so that's where I'm worried about that wording. Again, it's number 3 on page 11. That specific wording removes the description, and it says the prevailing thing would be the map. That has me a little anxious.
Yes, I understand that, and you're correct. It does say that. However, here again, we have enough ability to move about and say, what we really mean here is not a map on a piece of paper necessarily, but we mean the map as it's described within the legal description.
I would be more comfortable, frankly, if that specific wording was in the regulations you're proposing, but it's not clear.
That's right. That's one I would have to admit I would guess was missed as we went through this attempt to do this. And we did this with the assistance of our representative from the district, or the Attorney General's office.
Right.
Helped us with that. But it looks like it's one we might have missed.
Yeah, so I understand the intent, but again, sometimes down the road, you could end up with some issues with that, leaving it this description.
Possibly, yes.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
And this is Julie Workman. Just historically, the reason why we really wanted to more on the map was really, for years and years, the wording and the descriptions were completely different than the map. So that's why we kind of went forward to, let's look at the map, let's see what section you live in, let's see what street you're on, the maps show your street, there's your house, where's your house number? And so that when we were discussing in our own, that's why we wanted to also include, these are the maps to look at when you're doing it. And we tried to get rid, there was a lot of written that we got rid of. So, and that was 20 years ago. So it hasn't ever gotten passed and approved yet. So for 20 years, we've been working on getting these wordings just right so we can not have to worry about the telegraph. So thank you.
So I appreciate that, but again, what we're looking at, so if you have updated maps, then what we're having here are old maps, and some streets didn't even exist 20 years ago. These are the old maps. And so anyway, I have concerns the way the wording is, specifically in number 3, about that clarity. I understand what you're trying to do. And again, I just have concerns. Thank you.
Julie Workman, just those old maps were to show you what we're getting away from, and our new map that's clear are the ones we have included in the regulation. So those old maps are not what we want. Those are being taken out, and the new clear map. And there's smaller districts. This is what we've worked on for 20 years to get it where people are living. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Are there any other questions in Carson City? Okay, I don't see any other questions. Senator Daley?
No, I was just going to say, no, I don't see any.
Okay, thank you. Well, then it would be my recommendation at this time just to ask the commission to work with our legal counsel to fix the language in the regulations and come back in our December meeting with updated regulations.
Thank you.
So I'm going to defer regulation R016-24 till the December meeting. Okay, that'll take us to our next regulation, which was regulation R149-24. I believe we have somebody from the State Environmental Commission to answer any questions our commission members might have. Senator Daley, when they approach the witness table, please feel free to begin your questions. I believe you pulled this regulation.
Yes, myself and Senator Titus as well. I'll go first again? Okay, here we go. So, yes, in light of what you just heard, you can imagine where I'm going with you guys, right? Because you reference in subsections J and K, US EPA standards, various things. Does the state have standards for the toxins that we're talking about in this regulation? Do we already have a standard?
Good afternoon, Jason Kuchnicki. That's JASON, KUCHNICKI. The state of Nevada currently does not have standards for aflatoxins.
So, thank you. So we're going to adopt what the federal standards are now. You guys believe that those are appropriate levels. It's federal law, so we have to kind of follow it anyway. But if we were to set a standard more stringent than what the feds have now, we would be able to do that, same as OSHA and the other things I mentioned.
That's correct, sir. Our standard that we're proposing to adopt is very close to the federal guidelines. It is not exact. There is one small difference. The federal regulation, the federal criteria references a recreation season, and we have chosen that recreation season to encompass a full year, just because of, people are recreating in southern Nevada across a full year. So that's the only difference. But yes, we can adopt a more stringent standard, but we would not be able to adopt a less stringent standard.
So I understand we can adopt a more stringent standard, but not less, and I understand that. And that's where I'm trying to, similar to what we had before, when we reference those federal standards under the EPA, and I think this is a better example than the historic one, but those things can and do change. You got constant fights with, the EPA is blocking this, or they're the stumbling block for this, and various things. And it's, I suppose if you're trying to do some pipeline or something, that's a horrible thing to have to go through the process to protect the public, which is why it's all there. It's not there to damage anybody. It's there to have some standards on what we can all rely on. And having the discussion we just had on how some of those regulations get changed and why, and what the justifications that are in the realm of possibilities currently that weren't always there in the past. You can see my reluctance to reference those standards. We can reference things as they exist today if we think they're appropriate. If the federal government makes it more stringent in the future, we have to follow it. I understand and don't necessarily have a problem with that. If the federal government, if we just have the reference to their standards, relaxes it, and we don't have some other rule or backstop in our reg, then that becomes a new standard, and then we say, hey, that may not be appropriate for us, and you got to come back to the drawing board. So you think our standard is more stringent, is going to be, have you adopted that yet?
The State Environmental Commission did adopt that in early September.
So currently our standard will be more stringent than what the feds are requiring?
No, it's in line with what the federal criteria.
Except for that season issue.
Except for the season, correct.
So if they changed the level of toxicity and relaxed it, we would automatically follow that if the regulations are adopted by reference like they are in this provision.
Jeff Kinder, Kinder, Deputy Administrator with NDEP. Thank you for the question. That is a good question. We're adopting the standard as it exists today. We do that through our delegation. As you have noted, we have to be as stringent when we accept delegation from EPA to implement a program. If we choose to be more stringent or we choose to be less stringent, that would come back through a rulemaking process. So we would start the process all over. We would consider what EPA is proposing. We would participate in that rulemaking process. Then when EPA decides on a standard, then we would go back, we would draft new regulations. We would meet with our stakeholders, our regulated industry. We would work with those people to come up with, what makes the most sense for Nevada, and then we would propose that to the State Environmental Commission and the Legislative Commission.
So, and thank you for that, because that's kind of what I'm looking for, is as it is today. So if they change it and it's less stringent, if we want to adopt the less stringent rule, because then there's justification, then we would have to come back to regulation to do that. Otherwise, we can say, no, good luck with that. I don't care what you do in Missouri or North Dakota. We're keeping this here in Nevada. And you would still be, where does it say that in the regulation that we're as it is today? I didn't see that, or is it just by fiat? Where does it say that?
Seth Alm, for the record, Sethalm. In the footnote, we have reference to the document on the date it was published. We are also adding the numeric value into the criteria itself, so that value will be in the regulation.
And thank you for that. If it's as it is today and it would take additional regulations to change that federal level as it exists today, I can live with that. I just don't want to see some things change. And I know we had the issue with some of the vaccination stuff that's affecting people in the state and what's covered and what's not, creating a great deal of confusion. So anytime we have these federal regulations referenced, I'm going to be asking that question. We have one more after you guys today. But thank you. That's it for me, Madam Chair, on the question. I know Senator Titus has other questions, but this one, based on my questions and their answers, I would be okay with it when it comes up.
Thank you, Senator Daly. Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We'll go to you next.
Yeah, thank you. First, thank you for being here. I was actually happy to see this regulation today. You know, I'm the county health officer for Lyon County. This has been a big issue in my county in Lake Lahontan with these algae blooms and potential health effects, and it really, in my mind, wasn't addressed enough. So first, thank you. What I'm looking at this regulation is it looks as a couple things happening that I see. You're actually adding a new category under your water regulation, and I think that needs to be noted. At least it's in blue, like we didn't have it before. It's in front of me. You have the about fifth column, recreation involving contact with the water. So this is a whole new line item of what we're regulating. Is that correct?
Thank you for the question. Jason Kuchnicki for the record. Yes, this is what you're referring to is our toxics table. It's 445A 1.1236. And previous to this regulation, it did not have a beneficial use, which is associated with, it's a component of a water quality standard. All of our water quality standards are put in place to protect beneficial uses. This algal toxin standard is specific to water bodies with that designated beneficial use of recreation involving contact with the water.
Right.
And because it is an algal toxin, we decided to put it in the toxics table.
Right.
There are other tables specific to water bodies that have other constituents, but
Right. Yeah. So this is a new, actually a new concept of where you're putting this regulation and contact with humans, not just beneficial use, et cetera. So I do absolutely get that, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate that it's a water year as people access this now all year long and not specific. So I just want to more congratulate you and appreciate that you're actually putting this. I just worry that there's not enough, and this regulation won't address that. Some of the I was worried this summer when we had the algae bloom that there wasn't enough reaction from the state. There was a lot of back and forth I had with the health districts, the state, about, okay, fine, you've acknowledged this, now what do we do? How do we warn people about this? So at least this is a step in the right direction. So I want to thank you. And Madam Chair, I don't have any issues with the regulation. I just wanted to have some clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Titus. Is there anyone else in Carson City who would like to ask questions?
Yes, Madam Chair, if I could please, Assemblymember Hanson.
Yes, Assembly Member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for being here. We had a little discussion offline, and I appreciate you trying to do a quick little primer with me. I'm just, as we discussed offline, if we get to a designation of a body with this, I think the word you used was we kind of list it. I can understand getting to the point of, right now we just have advisories, and this would make it more to adopting those recommendations from that May 2019 scientific study. But once you get to that point, what does it look like? What kind of controls, what kind of restrictions does that community have to deal with? For lack of a better word, is it remediation? Is it just time? Because is it alga, I think how you pronounce it, it naturally occurs. It's not from discharge, correct?
thank you for the question. Jason Kuchnicki for the record. Yes, it's harmful algal blooms are a type of cyanobacteria that don't always produce toxins, but typically as they die off, later in the season, they have the capability of producing toxins. And so I think what you are referring to is if a water body is monitored and is consistently showing that it is violating this standard, should it be approved, then it would be listed on our 303D list of impaired water bodies. And what that triggers then is the need to develop what's called a total maximum daily load. It's just a fancy term for a water quality restoration plan. And that kind of triggers a scientific investigation of what sources and influences are contributing to the formation of these cyanobacterial harmful algal blooms. So it's a little bit difficult to say because it could vary depending on what is contributing in that particular watershed, water body, to the formation and persistence of those harmful algal blooms. But that listing on the 303D list does trigger a more in-depth investigation, at which point we would evaluate at that time what water quality improvements, what activities, measures could be implemented. And that involves a whole stakeholder input process. You know, what's acceptable to any community that might be affected, any businesses, industry, et cetera. And then once we go through that process of identifying what measures could be implemented, we would try to work with the industry or those partners to put those measures in place.
Madam Chair, if I could do a follow-up?
Please, Assemblymember, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm assuming we're not reinventing the wheel here. Are there other states that are doing this? So because we've not done this before, it sounds like a pretty heavy load, like for your agency, maybe if we get into this situation. So do you have a blueprint from other states that do this, what that looks like? You know, if it's naturally occurring, how do you mitigate it? If it's just nature doing its thing, other than close the waters off, that sort of thing?
Seth Alm for the record. There are many factors that goes into the development of what causes a harmful algal bloom, and to date we're not aware of any states that have written a TMDL specifically controlling a discharge of these listed cyanotoxins. It's likely would be addressing the nutrient inputs to the water body itself.
Thank you, Chair. That's sufficient for me.
Okay, we do have another reg, so before we make a motion, I would just like to invite our State Environmental Commission to stay at the table. We're going to take our 025-25 after we make a motion on R149-24. Senator Daley, would you like to make a motion?
On the one we just heard?
Yes.
149? Move to adopt
Yes.
R149-24.
Thank you, Senator. And do I have a second? I have a second from Speaker Yeager. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion is approved. Thank you. And members, I'm going to go ahead and skip to R025-25 since we have the State Environmental Commission with us. And I believe it was Senator Hansen who had a question, or Senator Titus.
I'm bringing it up, and it's the same question on adopting federal regulations. I'm not sure what section it in, but do we have the same answers before that as they stand now? Those are the ones you're adopting?
Andrea Seifert, for the record, ANDREA SEIFERT. Senator Daley, thank you for the question. Yes, the proposed revisions are going to be adopted by reference as of July 1st, 2025. And if any future regulations at the federal level were to be issued, we would go through a proper rulemaking process, as well as working with US EPA and our local stakeholders in providing public comment related to any of those revisions.
Yeah, and I think it's in section 3, sub 2, sub A12, I think, on page 4 on my copy. And you're exceeding the action level for lead set forth in 40 CFR, et cetera. Is there a footnote in there that says, as it exists today somewhere, or something that says you got to come back to the rulemaking if the federal government changes that rule to a less stringent standard?
Andrea Seifert for the record. So in section 1 of the regulation revision, we are adopting the provisions as they exist on July 1st, 2025. So then in section 3, where you were referencing, it would be as 40 CFR 141.80C exists as of July 1st, 2025. So a future modification to that section would not, would have to go through a regulatory revision.
Yeah, and thank you. I did see that part on there about as it existed on that date, which is good. And that section 12 is included in that original reference, so as it existed on the July 1st.
Andrea
Yeah.
Seifert for the record, yes, that is correct.
I just want to be clear, like I said, there were 3 of them that had that same issue. And I know I've talked with some other people on other things that have not been cleared up that have caused some problems, and I just don't want to compound it, so I'm asking the question. But I think that's a satisfactory answer for me, Madam Chair, when you're ready.
Okay. Are there any other questions in Carson City? Okay, seeing none, are there any questions in Las Vegas? Okay, we are ready for the motion, Senator Daley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Move to adopt R025-25.
I have a first from Senator Daley, a second from Speaker Yeager. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The motion is approved. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on to Regulation R180-24. And I believe we have someone from the Nevada Tax Commission here to help answer questions. I don't see anyone approaching in Carson City, and I don't see anyone here in Las Vegas. AVH, do we have anyone on the telephone line or on Zoom?
Yes, Chair. One moment, please.
Okay, it looks like we have them on Zoom. Okay. Senator, when you're ready, I believe you pulled this regulation.
Madam Chair, Senator Titus here. Am I the only one that asked? If so, I'm ready to ask my questions, unless there was somebody else.
Yes,
too.
please.
All right, great. Thank you. Sorry.
Senator Titus, go ahead.
I appreciate that. All right, quickly. I just need some clarification. Companies that sell already, when they sell alcohol or alcohol is brought into Nevada, they are already obligated, according to the digest, to furnish the department monthly reports and the type of alcohol beverages and those things that are shipped. What this is doing, I believe, is based on a law that we passed last session that allows alcohol to then be stored in warehouses here in this state. Is that what started this regulation change?
Yes. Good afternoon, Senator Titus. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. This is Shelley Hughes, SHELLIEHUGHES. I'm the executive director for the Department of Taxation. And yes, this does stem from the ability to be able to store liquor in an out-of-state bonded warehouses.
All right. So are they not, so this is going to be a new fee for them to do that? They're going to be required to have a certificate, and will there be a cost to that? I'm just looking at if they're just storing that, if they sell it then and they move it from the warehouse, then they would certainly be obligated to pay fees and taxes, and I get all that. But does this add then a new fee and or a permit that they're going to be required to pay? So it's a actually new cost?
Shelley Hughes for the record. Senator Titus, statute requires that liquor that is imported into Nevada, it has to be imported by a certificate of compliance holder. And so these bonded warehouses are shipping this product into Nevada. And so in order for them to do so, by statute, they need to have a certificate of compliance. There is a fee to have a certificate of compliance. I believe it is $50, and they would apply with our liquor division.
So these, follow up if I might, Madam Chair. So these warehouses prior to wouldn't have had any kind of that bonding certificate that you just mentioned. So this is a new requirement, and based on the bill that was then passed last session, this allowing them to store alcohol here.
Senator Tice, for the record, this is Shelley Hughes. It's not just to store the liquor, it's to ship it into Nevada. So they're required as a designated agent of a supplier to have the certificate of compliance to allow them to ship it into the state of Nevada.
Right, and so that law already exists, though. If you ship alcohol into Nevada, you have to have a license to do that, and whether they store that or not shouldn't make a difference, right? Wouldn't they already have to have a license, or this is a totally new license?
Excuse me, Shelley Hughes for the record. These bonded warehouses do not have a license. So a third-party supplier will ship their product to these bonded warehouses for storage, and then these bonded warehouses are shipping into Nevada. So they're acting as a designated agent of the supplier. So they typically do not hold a certificate of compliance currently. Now, if the supplier was to ship directly to us without having to store it in one of these bonded warehouses, or if they had a warehouse themselves that already had a certificate of compliance, this regulation would not apply to them.
So from the tax district, we have a lot of warehouses in Nevada, and we have Amazon, Walmarts, et cetera, that ship goods here and store them. Are they then charged? I know this is liquor, but basically these are warehouses storing a good. And so I'm wondering about, does this apply to all of our warehouses where you store anything, or is it unique to alcohol and somehow we're going to charge alcohol a little bit more? I just have concerns on the process here.
Shelley Hughes for the record. This is strictly for alcohol, but I also have Damon Hernandez, who is our tax program supervisor. He is the supervisor of our liquor division. He can provide further clarification. He is also on Zoom.
All right, because again, if this is just stored here, say in wine barrels, and it ages for 10 years and it's never sold in the state of Nevada, and then it gets processed and bottled, it just seems like a new tax to me.
Good afternoon, committee. My name is Damon Hernandez, Hernandez for the record, Tax Program Supervisor 3. I oversee liquor compliance and also liquor licensing. Just wanted to add some additional information that may be helpful. So previous conversation is absolutely correct. In order for anybody to ship liquor into the state, they require a certificate of compliance. And the importer wholesaler per statute can only import into the state from somebody that holds a certificate of compliance. One of the things that's a little different about this regulation is, as Director Hughes mentioned previously, when you have a situation where the actual supplier or manufacturer wants to import liquor into the state, they can obtain a certificate of compliance, identify an importer wholesaler in Nevada, and go ahead and ship in that way. The thing that's slightly different here is due to the influx and the common situation where out-of-state suppliers will use a bonded warehouse / fulfillment center, if you will, to import product, even though that product is coming from the bonded warehouse, if you will, because it's the product is leaving that location and coming into Nevada, that bonded warehouse needs a certificate of compliance. And the way for that to occur is our statute allows for the supplier or their designated agent to obtain a certificate of compliance. So per statute, the supplier will have a certificate of compliance. They would appoint the bonded warehouse as their designated agent, who will also obtain a certificate of compliance. And then the liquor will be on a compliant path into the state of Nevada to the importer wholesaler. The other part, obviously, is that the reporting part will be the reporting responsibility for reporting only the liquor that's imported into Nevada. That responsibility will be borne by the actual supplier. And then to maybe touch on the question regarding the warehousing. So the typical path of product would be the product would come from either the supplier or their designated agent to a Nevada importer wholesaler. Obviously, these shipments come in daily for the retailers, large and small. The importer wholesalers have the warehouses. They receive the product, received compliantly from a certificate of compliance holder. They have their own internal logistics system, and then those orders are eventually delivered to the retailer who ordered them through that supply chain, whether it's Walmart or another retailer. Hope that helps answer the question.
Well, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, but I appreciate all of that, but I guess I need some more clarification. Is if you import, I was under the impression in that bill during session that they could bring in alcohol and store it here or age it here, and it may never be consumed in Nevada. So there's no pathway that all of that stuff that's going to be imported here and stored in these warehouses would ultimately then be consumed in Nevada. I was looking at that they're stored here. We had to pass a bill for that, allowing them to age things in Nevada. And maybe never be consumed here. And so I get the pathway that if it was consumed here, we're going to tax it. But it seems like we're taxing things that we may never consume. So that's where my concern is. That the storage may just be storing to age, not storing to sell here at the Nevada market.
So in-state manufacturers who can import product as part of their manufacturing process. And I believe one of them is allowed to import for the purpose of storage. However, that's a slightly different process. The process that we're talking about here is, I believe, is for the out-of-state manufacturer who would like to have their product sold in Nevada. In other words, finished product, not manufactured product. They would do so following the certificate of compliance method. And again, the addition with this regulation provides is a compliant way through the bonded warehouse, whereby both the supplier and the bonded warehouses have a certificate of compliance, allowing that product to be imported compliantly to the importer wholesaler, and again, through the remainder of the supply chain.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. I still have concerns, thank you.
Is there anyone else in Carson City who has questions? Okay, does anyone in Las Vegas have questions? Assemblymember Hafen? Okay, seeing none, I'd be looking for a motion for our 180-24. I have I have a motion from Assemblymember Watts and a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay.
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 Okay, I believe if you would just raise your hand so I can make sure I call out the names. I have Senator Titus and Senator Hansen opposed. Motion carries. Motion is approved. Thank you for being here. Okay, we are going to move on to our next regulation. There are 3 regulations for the NIAA. I plan to take those all together. They are R003-25, R022-25, and R057-24. Do we have someone from NIAA here in Carson City? I don't see anyone in Las Vegas. AVH, can you check to see if we have someone on Zoom or on the telephone line?
Here, we have no one in the Zoom.
AVH, is there anyone on the telephone line?
Here, we have no callers on the line.
Seeing no one here from NIAA, I'm going to wait to defer the regulations to the December meeting until the end of the meeting, seeing if anyone from NIAA shows up. If you are hearing this or watching this committee meeting, please note that we need you present to answer questions on 3 of your regulations. If you do not join us via Zoom or in either of our locations, we will be deferring your regulations until the December meeting. That being said, we can move forward with Regulation R008-25, the Nevada State Board of Optometry. Do we have anyone in Las Vegas or Carson City?
Yes, Assemblymember Adam Schneider, Executive Director of Nevada State Board of Optometry, ADAMSCHNEIDER.
Thank you for joining us. And Senator Daly, I believe I had you as the initial requester of this regulation. Do you want to lead us with questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That was correct. And a bit of a technical issue. I don't know if it's the end of the world or anything like that, but I do know in your statement of the need for the regulation, you wanted to make things more clear. So I was hoping that, we would actually be able to do that. But when I read it and then I go back and I look at what the statute says, when you delete the language, which I think had meaning, I think it's in section 1, subsection 2, where it says, an optometrist shall not employ or be employed by a physician. That is impaired with the NRS, I think it was 636.373. And if we were trying to make it more clear, the regulation language was very clear, can't do it. The law is less clear, because that's now the only reference that I could see, which says that this statute doesn't authorize an optometrist to employ or be employed by a physician, which logically leads to me, if words have the meaning, is that they're not authorized by the statute, but they could be authorized, but it doesn't say by who or how. In my view, that makes this much less clear. Some of my colleagues have heard me say this before. The English language is the most precise language in the world. So it always bugs me when we're not precise. Like I said, I don't know if that's the end of the world or not, but I don't think you hit your mark if you wanted to make it more clear. It seems less clear that there's a prohibition against an optometrist being employed or employing a physician.
Thank you for the question, Senator Daly. Adam Schneider for the Board of Optometry. So the version that is in front of the committee is in concert with the legislative drafting lawyers that we worked with. And in that dialogue was the original proposal that an optometrist shall not employ or be employed by a physician for the sake of clarity and any kind of non-confusion. In that dialogue, the lawyers at the committee had said, look, it's already stated within NRS. Thus, it is unnecessary to be placed into NAC. And so by virtue of that, that was the sequence in which that particular subsection was eliminated.
And I'm
because
not,
in speaking to the actual regulation, the purpose of the regulation is to balance the ability of the optometrist to engage in business relationships. For example, when it says, other than a physician, while you still have the ability to utilize those corporations or those persons for your business, there's still a prohibition on the ability of the corporation or the physician to own the business and then therefore kind of de facto violate any sort of corporate practice of medicine doctrine. So that's kind of the underlying intent of this particular regulation, and then augmented by what you have in front of the committee today.
and thank you for that. And I'm not, the rest of it seemed okay and clear to me. And it was probably moving the ball forward a little bit on what's allowed and what's not allowed. But when I read that, and then I went back and checked the NRS, and yes, it's covered, because I just wanted to see if we're eliminating that prohibition just in regulation, and we're not. There is a statute that addresses it, but it's less clear. It says that it doesn't authorize them to, as I said, which then leads a plain language person to say, who can I get authorization from then, and how do I do that, rather than a strict prohibition. And I know you can't change NRS and all that stuff. You can augment and explain and enhance some of the stuff by regulation. But and I would have, not faulting anybody, just me and my nature, I would have argued with them until we got a little closer to having what we want, which is the clarity. No other questions, Madam Chair. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think the board would authorize it because that's their intent, but the language isn't clear.
Are there any other questions in Carson City? Members down here? Facing no other questions, if you'd like to make a motion, Senator Daley.
Madam Chair, thank you. Despite my misgivings here, I move to adopt R008-25, and maybe we can fix some of that stuff later. Thanks.
Do I have a second? I have a first from Senator Daley, a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you for being here, Mr. Schneider. We are going to go ahead and move on to our last two regulations, which I will take together. It's R01325 and R024-25. I believe we have the Board of Wildlife Commissioners here to help answer questions. We are going to begin with Regulation 013-25. And we will again go to Carson City to begin our line of questioning.
So Senator Hansen's up then? I held it.
Yes, Senator, we're ready for you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. All right. The first one is actually a pretty good regulation. I like the whole overall concept here. In your clear and concise explanation, you said the regulation is necessary to provide additional convenience to the department's customers, resolve uncertainty generated by existing regulatory language and existing or proposed hunt application structures. This regulation will improve customer service and satisfaction, particularly for junior hunters and their parents or guardians. All laudable, and I agree completely with that. The reason I held it, though, is 2.5 years ago, the legislature passed SB 311, which allowed transfers. And you know, the concept for all the people listening on the commission, there is a shrinking pool of younger people entering hunting. And we've been trying to correct that by making all sorts of opportunities available for younger people. There's so many different competing things. One of the things that we did, and this was on the advice of a longtime Washoe County resident, Rex Flowers, he suggested that we create a program in which we allow a transfer of tags from adult and senior hunters to junior hunters. That was approved unanimously in 2023. We did leave it up to the commission to adopt a regulation to get that program implemented. 2.5 years have gone by and it's still not implemented. And they just had a meeting on it, and the original fiscal note was $38,000. Now it's supposedly up to $400,000. And in my mind, this regulation actually could have included something like that. So while I approve this legislation, I'm kind of wondering why you guys, and of course, is there anybody here actually from the commission, or this all end-out people?
Thank you. For the record, Alan Janae, last name Jennne, Director of Department of Wildlife. And we do have Commissioner Tommy Cavilla down there in Las Vegas, who is also here to speak. But absolutely very familiar with your bill, 311 from the 2023 session. And there were many things going on. And as you can imagine, we're trying to meet many needs with our constituents. One of those, as I have described before, is our e-tag system, and that's probably one of the biggest things that we're trying to get stood up, and that was one of the reasons that complicated the timelines associated with your bill, but also adjusted the expenses with that. And I'll hold for your question. I see you pushing your mic.
Actually, it was several people's bill, including Dr. Titus's, so it wasn't just mine. My bigger point is we just went through an entire legislative session, and you guys didn't come in and say boo to us about it. I did have a meeting with Commissioner Young, who indicated you were very, very close to adopting it, and we didn't need to make any changes at the legislative level. So anyway, I just want to get on the record, though, that while I approve this, and I completely support the idea of increasing the number of youth hunters. I'm very frustrated that after 2.5 years and a full additional legislative session, that hasn't been adopted and nothing was done at the legislative level to mean whatever corrections you guys feel is flawed in the bill. So I just want to get that on the record and say you guys need to work on that. It was unanimously passed by the legislature, yet to this day, 2.5 years later, it's still waiting for regulations to be done.
Thank you, sir. And if I may, I will give you some good news is that this last year, the commission made substantial gains in providing opportunity to our junior hunters with the establishment of a horn shorter than ears antelope junior hunt. And with that, plus some modifications to the mule deer junior hunt, they created a primitive junior tag that allowed for more tags to be issued. And so in that collective responses, there were actually junior tags remaining at the end of the junior tag season this year. So there was a lot of opportunity for junior hunters without going through the system of creating the process that you spelled out for a junior tag program. So despite the fact that the intent of the bill has not been met in creating that junior tag program, is there have been many other substantial steps to try to create opportunities for Nevada's youth.
And I salute you for that, and I want to see that continue. But the legislature did unanimously pass a bill giving you guys that responsibility, and it hasn't been done. Madam Chair, I don't want to beat this one too much. I would gladly support this existing regulation, but I want to get on the record that I think while the department's moved in the right direction, that for 2.5 years they've sat on this regulation, and they sat through an entire legislative session and didn't say boo about it, and now they just had a meeting on it and again postponed it. From what I can tell, indefinitely, just they keep postponing it in spite of the fact that the legislature did give them a very specific direction on this one. So anyway, I will gladly, unless somebody else has questions, move to adopt this regulation.
Are there any questions in Carson City, Senator?
No additional questions in Carson on this regulation.
Okay, and it doesn't appear we have additional questions in Las Vegas. Okay, I will take your remarks as a motion to adopt, and I'd be looking for a second. I have a second from Speaker Yeager. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Motion is approved. Thank you. And while we still have the Board of Wildlife Commissioners, let's go ahead and roll into Regulation R024-25A. And we will go back to Carson City for questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's me again who held this one. This has to do with increasing demerit points for certain specific things. Just a real quick background, the demerit bill was passed. It was actually AB 537 in the 1995 legislative session. It was introduced by Assemblyman Dave Humke. It was my bill. Actually, I wrote the demerit system, so I'm very familiar with it. The original concept was it was going to be a 3, 6, 9, 12 system. In other words, minor violations would be 3, maximum penalty would be 12. At 12 violations currently, you will lose your hunting, fishing, and trapping privileges for 3 years. So that's the most draconian penalty you get administratively. Keep in mind that this is in addition to what would be judicially imposed on a citation. So if we jump to the regulation itself on page 3, where I think it's 3, of R02425, it says unlawfully using or possessing thermal imaging, infrared or electronic night vision, or electronically enhanced light gathering or comparable night vision devices or equipment, which would be, as I understand it, a 12 demerit penalty, first time offense. Got a real problem with that. That, again, that is the most severe penalty you can give, and that would be for simply possessing a light gathering device or any of these things. I'm aware of especially certain predator hunters that have used these things, probably will continue to do it, and even if they're not found guilty of using it, they're simply have it in their backpack or whatever, without any evidence they actually committed the crime, they would be liable for a 3-year suspension in addition to whatever potential penalties a judge would impose. Is my understanding of that correct?
Thank you. For the record, Alan Janae. And so I just want to point to the law, the NAC, that actually is associated with this. 503-1455. It says a person shall not possess or use any of the following equipment or devices while hunting or taking any big game mammal or game bird or while locating game mammals or game birds for the purpose of hunting or taking, including without limitation. Then it goes through the devices. And so it is in relation to hunting. And so that it's not merely the possession, it's merely the possession during hunting. And so I can pass this to Commissioner Tommy Caviglia, and he can give you kind of a little bit of background as to why this came out this way. So I'll pass that to Commissioner Tommy Caviglia down in Las Vegas.
Thank you, Chair. Tommy Caviglia, TOMMYCAVIGLIA. And as Director Janae mentioned, the commission approved the thermal imaging regulation. I think it was a few years ago. We also subsequently, just within the last year, the commission generated an emergent technologies committee. That committee was just for emergent technologies, the new equipment for hunting. That emergent technology committee, within the last year, we defined the criteria of what items we would take on as a committee. That the committee itself, one of the main items of discussion on that committee level was thermal imaging, and then the trail cams item that will come up as well. Those are the two items that's with public comment, county advisory board comment, then also, and not obviously committee member comment. those were the two main items that we wanted to address. We had substantial discussion on that at the end of those committee meetings. We just thought that increasing the demerits on the thermals for the purpose of hunting was warranted. The committee recommended that. We made a recommendation to the commission. The commission had a meeting. At that commission meeting, we directed the department to draft the language to increase the demerits. That was workshopped, and then that was approved that the increased demerits was approved in September. I would like to note that during that whole process, we had a lot of public comment. We had a lot of comment from the cabs, and then even the Nevada Predators Hunters Association in the September meeting also gave approval on the increase in the demerits to 12 for the thermals. And just, again, I'm only one of the 9 commissioners up there, but basically where it falls back on is nobody considers a use of thermals fair chase. This is the thermals you can utilize the thermals day or night, right? So that's what creates the perception of fairness in hunting. And then that's why the commission wanted to increase the demerits to 12.
Okay, I got the reasoning behind it, and I'm not in favor of using thermal devices in hunting, and I very much am a supporter of fair chase. However, in your statement to this legislative body, you wrote, you didn't mention this in your testimony, Commissioner. You write, the issue this regulation aims to address is the absence of meaningful penalties for violations, which results in insufficient deterrence against the use of trail cameras and thermal imaging devices during closed seasons. Now, I asked the department for evidences that there are, in fact, people that have either been cited and then did it a second time. To date, I haven't received anything except a claim that they can't give me any of that because it's too difficult to pull it out of their system. In fairness, that was asked yesterday, so I don't want to hold them accountable for that. However, what you just said didn't indicate that there is a problem with repeated use of trail cameras and thermal devices during closed seasons. You indicated that you guys think the penalties on the demerit side are insufficient. Can somebody here tell me how many citations have been issued for misuse of thermal devices or trail cameras to date?
Thank you for the question. Jake Kramer, Game Warden Captain. It's Kreamer. Senator Hansen, while I can't give you the actual citation numbers for problems that we tried to discuss with you the other day, I was able to get into our system and pull some of the data from seizures and evidence seizures. And as of, I can give you the breakdown, we've had, to my knowledge, and this is not based on cases, not based on citation numbers, so this could vary, either up or mostly up on the thermals, but we've had, to my best of knowledge, 3 cases so far in thermal use for big game hunting. Concerning the trail cameras, in 2020, we had seized 8 cameras. In 2021, 14 cameras. In 2022, 5. In 23, we had 8 cameras seized. 24, we had 9. And so far this year, 5 cameras, trail cameras. So we're not seeing a significant change in behavior based on the current penalties, if you will.
Okay, well, the problem with the stats you just gave me, how many of those are repeat? Are you telling me that there are people that had their thermal stuff confiscated by you guys, and then you found them in the field again after having these sorts of things taken away from them? Because the whole purpose of this, according to your own explanation, is that there's an absence of meaningful penalties and there is an insufficient deterrence. How many people that you have cited or taken cameras away were caught a second time doing the same offense?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Based on the information that I was able to get in the short amount of time, I don't have an answer for you on that.
Okay, I can take a wild guess. It's none. Because if somebody had all these expensive things taken away, they wouldn't go out and do it again, especially. So the reason I bring that up and why I believe that is because the whole argument here is the current penalty structure is insufficient to deter. But unless you can show some evidence that these penalties that these individuals who have been caught, which is frankly sounds like a handful over the last few years, that they then go out and repeat it, then you would need to bump the penalties up. Now, the penalties you guys are proposing are the most draconian that you have under the demerit system. And I think it's important for our commission, the Legislative Commission, to understand this is a administratively done punishment. It's not done through a judicial thing. If, in fact, I was cited for a trail camera and I didn't know the law and I go before a justice of the peace and I explain the situation and I get fined $100, if this passes, I will not only get fined the $100, but then I will lose my right to hunt, fish, and trap for up to 3 full years, even though the judge basically recognized that it was an honest mistake. And that's the problem with using the maximum penalties in an administrative way. There is no flexibility like there is under a judicial system. That's been an issue with this, and that's why when we designed the demerit system, we made sure that it was to be moderate. It wasn't to be maximum on anything, because it wasn't, just so everybody knows, when we first proposed it, the NDOW folks, the law enforcement in particular, wanted maximum penalties for everything. I've got the old book from 1995, because I was on that committee, and we ended up coming up with a very good system that is very moderate in its application of the administratively imposed penalties. Because you have, in addition to the administratively imposed demerits, you also have the normal punishment done by a judge or a jury in really severe cases. So anyway, I've got some issues with that. The last question, Madam Chair, if I could. Right now, Warden, when you issue a citation, on it normally there is a bail written on it. Is there also on those citations currently a category where you write down the actual demerits that the individual will receive if they just pay the bail and admit their guilt and move away?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Jake Kramer again. There is a section on the citation. On a citation, you can a warden can sign up to 2 statutes, if you will, on that citation, or 2 penalties, violations. Each one of those line items has sections in there for the warden to write in the demerit for that specific violation. That's not intended to go to the court, although the court does see it. That's intended for internal processes.
But does the individual who received the citation know that if they plead guilty, they're going to be assigned? For example, in this case, if the individual gets caught with a trail camera and you guys list the bail at $500 and there's also a 12 demerit penalty associated with it, does the individual realize that if he pays the $500 that he's now also going to give up his right to participate in all the normal activities for 3 years?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, it is listed on that citation, plain as day for them to read.
And now, has that changed recently? The reason I bring it up is I have a close friend who got a citation years and years ago, was embarrassed about it, just paid his fine, and to his horror, he got a notice from the Wildlife Commission that he had lost his hunting, fishing, and trapping privileges for, that time I think it was 5 years, 3 years or whatever. I think it was before, it had to be 3 years at the time. Have you guys done that? In every citation that's issued, they do have the demerit points listed, so there's no there's no confusion on that?
That's correct. In my 21 years with this agency as an officer, we've always had that line item on there to my knowledge.
Good. Well, I needed that clarification. That's a good thing, because I'm really concerned about when people do things where they may have a relatively minor fine, but then they end up with these draconian administratively applied penalties. So that, just, that's the number one reason I oppose this regulation. I support the concept of fair chase. I don't think they should be using thermal imaging. I think there's some horrible abuses with the trail camera stuff. So I'm all in favor of stopping that. I'm not in favor, though, of taking away people's privileges for 3 years without having very substantial evidences that through a judicial process before that penalty is applied, because it will apply to every single individual that receives these citations and pleads guilty or goes through a judicial process, and even if the judge reduces the penalty, if he's found guilty, he's going to lose his privileges for 3 years. So that's my real issue with this. The basic concept behind it, I'm fine. I don't think, as the author of the demerit system, I can tell you right now, the legislative intent of that was not this. This is a violation of the concept of the demerit system. It's supposed to be moderate in its application. This is draconian in its application. So with that, Madam Chair, thank you very much for giving me a free hand to ask these questions.
You're welcome, Senator Hansen. Is there anyone else in Carson City interested in asking questions? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone in Las Vegas? Okay, do we have Assemblymember Hafen on Zoom? Just want to check with him to see if he has any questions.
No questions, Chair.
Okay, and with that, I'd be looking for a motion. I have a motion from Speaker Yeager. I have a second from Senator Scheibel. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
Nay. If my
Nay.
nays would raise their hands. Okay, I have a nay from Assembly Member Hansen, Senator Hansen, Senator Titus, and if we could zoom out so I could see my Zoom screen. I have a nay from Assembly Member Hafen as well. Motion is approved. Thank you for being here. Members, it looks like we do have the NIAA with us now on Zoom. So we are going to go back to the regulations that we skipped. That is regulation R003-25, R022-25, and R057-24. We are going to start with R003-25. We are going to go ahead and go to Carson City. I know you had originally listed this as one of the regulations you would like to have pulled, Senator Daly, so I'm going to let you lead us on questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this question and the question on this regulation is impaired with R0057-24. I'm just, and maybe it can be answered, I'm not sure, but in Section 3, subsection 1, and this is existing language, it uses the word misconduct, right? When you're going to be having a penalty, so I think it's sub B, it says the issuance of a sanction indicating the occurrence of misconduct and the imposition of a fine. So I couldn't find it, I looked, and maybe I just missed it. Is misconduct defined somewhere?
Madam Chair, this is Paul Anderson. I'm legal counsel for the NIAA. Misconduct defined anywhere within, 385B.960 or just the chapter in general?
I looked in the chapter that this amendment is, so I looked in the regulation to see if it's defined in this regulation. I also looked in the NRS to see if it was defined in that. I couldn't find it under definitions, so I didn't know if misconduct was defined somewhere.
But I don't believe misconduct is defined, and I apologize. I didn't have notice of this meeting, so I'm just looking at these regs for the first time in quite some time. So I'm doing my best to answer your questions, but I don't believe that misconduct is defined within the definitional portions of 385B, Chapter 385B of the NAC, and it is not defined in the statutes dealing with Chapter 385B. But with respect to this regulation, this is the general sanctioning regulation for violations of all the various regulations within NAC 385B. I don't know if that helps.
And I understand, and that's existing language, so I'm not, saying you're doing anything wrong there or nothing. And I don't really have an issue with adjusting the violation penalties or fines. I just was looking for misconduct to be defined. Got because when we get in, I have other questions under 05724, where we're talking about, and I'll wait till we get there, but unsportsmanlike conduct and some of the there's several issues with that. I know you guys tried revising it, but I still think we're not there yet. So when I read this one and I looked at the misconduct in conjunction with some of the stuff that's coming under 057, I just had some concerns and wanted to know if it was defined. But if it's not, I would defer to the rest of the people on the commission if they're okay with that, because it's existing and no questions on the rest of it. But in conjunction with the other regulation, I was just looking for some explanation.
Yeah.
Are there?
Is that a question for me or?
No, I think you answered the question. It's not defined.
Okay.
If you find it later, let me know. But go ahead, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Daly. Are there any other questions in Carson City? I do have some questions down in Las Vegas, but want to make sure I give everyone in Carson City the opportunity to engage.
We're welcome to hear some questions from Southern Nevada.
Assemblymember Watts, do you want to lead us in questions?
Certainly. Thank you, Chair. So I actually have some questions about the adjustments to the amounts. So generally, they're being revised upward, although in Section 3, Sub 1A, it's kind of being clarified and basically being moved down. So I looked through the kind of statement about the justification for the regulations and didn't see anything that really explained the justification for these adjustments. So I was wondering if you could provide some additional context to us on that.
Thank you. Again, Paul Anderson, legal counsel for the NIA. The penalty amounts that are set forth in the regulations that are being revised here have not been revised for years. And what we have found is, with respect to several member schools throughout the state, there will be violations of requirements by them, and imposing the existing amounts as penalties really doesn't cause the problem to not happen in the future. And so that's one of the bases for raising the amounts is to, make it sting so that corrections occur and violations don't occur repeatedly from the same member schools. That's one reason. The other reason was just basically, times and the fact, that, the prior amounts just simply didn't, aren't really keeping up with economic times.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. I think, again, that would be helpful information for us to get on the front end when you're compiling some of the supplemental information for this, for us to understand when was the last time that these amounts were adjusted, and if you had specific information that indicates that there are essentially these repeat offenses, and that those sanction amounts are not sufficient to deter kind of repeat offenses. I think that would be helpful for us to have when we look at, approving these updated regulations. So thank you for the question, Chair.
Thank you, Assembly Member. And I do have one question for you, Mr. Anderson. Out of curiosity, is there an appeals process for someone who gets a sanction?
Yes, there's a appeal process. It's set forth in NAC 385B. I believe it's 910. So that we have a regulation that basically provides any adverse ruling with respect to a regulation is appealable under our appeal process, and the appeal process follows the provisions for contested cases under NRS 233B.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, I'd be looking for a motion. I have a first from Speaker Yeager, a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Okay, seeing none, the motion is approved. Okay, we will move on to the second regulation, which is R022-25. Senator Daly, I'm going to come back up to you to lead us in questioning.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And this one I got just issues with because I believe it's too open-ended. I know there are plenty of examples where you can say, including this regulation, where the fee is set or the cost is set by regulation. But in order to increase it, you don't have to go to the legislature, wait 2 years and do all of that stuff. You can increase it by regulation. I've told other boards and commissions, I think the court reporter board recently just got some legislation passed that allows them to adjust their fees by regulation. But they have to get a regulation to increase it. It has to come to the legislative commission, so there is some oversight by the legislature. The way I read this is a decision made by the executive director. Where am I at? I'm on the wrong one, sorry. So it says that an amount determined by the board. So the way I read that is, instead of having an amount set that you would then have to come back to the legislative commission or some oversight to say what is the fee that we can charge, is removed, and the board has autonomy to do what they want. So if I'm doing a budget process and I'm the board and I have an increased cost or I have something I just want, whether it's justified or you can afford it, you have an open-ended process that allows you to charge whatever you think the market will bear, and we've seen what happens with that in the housing industry. It has bad outcomes, right? Market rate. So I think it lacks budgetary discipline. I think it's overreaching on any type of discipline that would be applied to a budget process. Way too open-ended, goes against having some oversight by the legislature. So as is, I just can't support it, and I think you need to rethink it all the way around.
Madam Chair, may I address that?
Please go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Paul Anderson, Legal Counsel. I believe if you look at subsection 2 of section 1 there, which talks about the factors that have to be reviewed and determined by the board in determining what the amounts of membership dues will be. So that's, I think, is that controls, the board can't be, just charging at a whim. It has to be based on these things, the costs associated with, organizing, supervising, and certifying officials, obtaining and retaining facilities for regional and state tournaments, and other factors that are relevant to the costs of running the association. So that's where I think we provided language that would prevent what you're referencing, Senator Daly.
And thank you for that. And I did read that language. Of course, I respectfully disagree. You understand, I understand at least, because I used to do it for a living in a previous life, negotiations and the balance of power in those negotiations. It would be fine if you guys did all those considerations, got the input, changed the number, then came to the Legislative Commission and said, hey, this is how come we're justifying it. We did all of this input from the schools, and this is what we think it should be. You had some agreement, some disagreement, et cetera. You have 17 school districts in the state, all have different budgets. Not all of them are participating in every sport. I'm not exactly sure how this works, or if you're competing in any one, there's one fee, or is it per sport? I don't know. But nevertheless, the negotiating power is one-sided. You can get all of that information and still make a decision based on what the board wants. And I just, you have to have a balance. If the one side really has no power to stop you and the board can make the decision regardless, if the, increase is maybe not agreed to or felt justified by the school districts, the board can still make the decision. So there's an imbalance in that negotiation.
Okay.
Senator Daly, is there anyone else in Carson City who has questions?
I believe Senator Titus and Assemblywoman or member, however you want to say it, Hanson.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Senator Titus, and then we'll go to Assembly Member Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification for me, please, sir, on just the very first page of this 2225 regulation. You're separating out the school must pay annual dues, and then you define less than 600 pupils during the school year. The school, and I think Senator Daly alluded to this, but is this based on school districts? That it is based by schools, correct? Not the district. Can you clarify that for me?
Yes, thank you. It's based on the size of each school. We have a certain number of member schools. I think it's 125 member schools or whatever. So schools that are smaller with 600 pupils or less pay a certain amount. Schools that are larger pay a different amount.
Right. So just to be clear, then it wasn't based on the 17 school districts. It's really based on all the schools in the state of Nevada that would choose to have the interscholastic activities association belong to that. Correct?
Correct.
So
For
then
their membership, each school has a separate membership.
Right. That was my understanding, just so you know. So based on that, then, everybody knows I'm a rural Nevada kid. My school had less in the entire K through 12 at one point, less than 100 kids. And so I'm wondering, and when the whole school, we were talking about each individual school, high school, intermediate school, elementary school, so they all have to sign up separately. So, and when you kind of lump a fee for 600 pupils in your school, then everybody pays that same fee. Even the very rural schools that only have less than 100 kids for all the grades have to pay this same amount, or do you have it a graduated charges for that participation?
The fee is based on those set amounts. Smaller rural schools, with 600 or less, even the situation that you're mentioning there, if it's a school with 100 students or whatever, would pay the same fee that schools a little bit larger, but less than a large, considered the larger schools in the state would pay. So it would be the same amount.
Thank you for that clarification. I understand what you're saying. I'm just frustrated by that. Thank you.
Madam
Assembly
Chair.
Member Hanson.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I just really actually want to just do a ditto to, particularly to Senator Daly's comments and concerns. Too broad of authority, not a lot of checks and balances. And in regards to your comment on Section 1B, that there is a formula that's to be calculated, but again, as was said by my colleague, the board is determining what that amount is as part of that formula. And so I have some problems with this, just to be transparent, and would have a hard time advancing it as it is. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I'm going to come down to Las Vegas and hand it over to Assembly Member Watts.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I just wanted to note that I agree with all of my colleagues. I appreciate what Senator Titus mentioned and think it's probably worth considering that a school with 100 pupils pays the same as a school with 599 pupils. And then as soon as they get to 600, the amount actually jumps up a bit from what is $850 to it would be $900. So just considering how you might update this to make sure that there's some equity. And again, as Senator Daley said, certainly support efforts to move things so that they are not constantly stuck having to wait for the legislature to adjust things in statute, but believe that we definitely need to be able to have oversight over some of these things as they're being updated in regulation, and concerned with the removal of that. So if there is going to be a change to any of these dues, I would like to see a specific amount that's proposed. And again, as I noted on the previous regulation, I would like to see a detailed justification for that proposed change submitted in the accompanying backup materials to come before this commission. So I do not support this regulation as it's proposed. Thank you.
Any other questions in Las Vegas? Okay, Mr. Anderson, I think what you're hearing from the committee is that they were looking for equity and transparency in this regulation. I don't believe the regulation provides that as drafted. I'm going to go ahead and defer regulation R022-25 until the December meeting. Please reach out to the committee members if you have questions and get details on what exactly they are looking for. I know Assemblymember Watts requested a detailed description of why the dues being requested are being requested. And we look forward to seeing you back here with this regulation in December. Okay.
Thank you.
With that, yes, with that, we have you for one more regulation. Our last regulation for the day committee is going to be R057-24. Again, I'm going to go ahead and go to Carson City. Senator Daley, I believe you were the first to reach out to me to pull this reg, so I'm going to come to you to lead us with questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank the Interscholastic Activities Association for attempting to make some adjustments from the previous version of this, and I think you did make some improvements, but I just, some things that are a little too broad, maybe undefined, and just subjective, if you will. So when I look at Section 6, subsection 12, and you define active violence means verbal abuse, and that's my first issue because words are not violence. Assault and battery or any other conduct that threatens the safety of a participant, coach, administrator, spectator. I'm just curious, if you have assault and battery, what would be the other conduct that threatens the safety of the participant? Because I think you probably got it covered. And before we get too much farther, you define assault, you define battery. And then when you get to verbal abuse, on subsection D, means aggressive, offensive, or profane language that is directed at a person. And I believe with my next question, you could make history here if you can definitively answer it in a universal way that could be uniformly applied on what does offensive mean.
So, Senator, could you direct me to what you are looking at? As I said, I just got notice of this, and so I'm trying to find what you're
Section 6, subsection 12, A for the first question, and 12D for the second part.
Section 6 of the reg.
Members in Carson City, I would ask that you mute your mics when you're not speaking. We're getting a lot of feedback down here from unmuted mics.
So Section 6, I don't know if I'm missing there something or whatever, but all I see there is that is the provisions of NAC 385B 802 to 385B 8112 inclusive apply to each pupil, coach, administrator, faculty member, and sports official who participates in or is assigned to a sanctioned sport. Am I missing? I'm obviously missing something.
Are you on 057-24, the one that we looked at previously?
Yeah, yes, I am. Yeah.
Well, and you have a different one than I have.
And I'm looking at section 6 of our revised regulation. That's what I have. I don't know.
Mr. Anderson, you can also visit our legislative website. We have copies of all of the materials, including the regs that we are seeing on the legislature's website.
Okay, well.
It's section 6, subsection 12.
Which is on page 7 of the regulation that we are looking at. Page 7.
Okay. I'm sorry. All right. I'm to subsection 12, so I apologize for that. And the question again, I'm sorry.
So I have an issue with including verbal abuse under violence, because words are not violence. You say assault and battery, which is added, or any other conduct. So what might be included in any other conduct now that you have assault and battery? Then you define assault and battery, and then define verbal abuse to mean aggressive, offensive, or profane language. My question was, define offensive. And if you can do it, you'll make history.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is Paul Anderson, legal counsel for the NIAA. I agree that's difficult to define, but we're talking about high school athletics and trying to keep control with respect to spectators and coaches and players and everybody else. And so, I believe that's a matter of some interpretation. You see it in sports all the time where there's, ejections and action taken against various participants or individuals who, are out of line with respect to the decorum of the event.
And thank you for that. And you understand my problem about speech in the first place is not violence. But then, if I heard you correctly, and let me paraphrase a little bit, is that, yes, it's hard to define, subject to interpretation. So let me go the next step on the famous quote from some judge in a case on what is obscene. And he said, well, I can't really tell you, but I know it when I see it.
Exactly.
So that's just not a standard that's going to fly, in my view. So thanks for trying again, but it's still got a lot of problems, open-ended issues. I mean, what would be considered offensive? Somebody flips someone off. They didn't even say a word. She made a gesture. And yeah, it might be offensive to some other people and might just be the way people communicate in other areas.
But Senator Daly, just if I can add, is that what we want to be seeing at our high school athletic events?
People have the right to engage in free speech and those types of activities. And if you want to, I just don't think we can get there.
Are there any other questions in Carson City?
Madam Chair, I do real quick.
Yes, Member Hanson, please.
Thank you. Yes, I don't think there's comfort with me for sure, and I think some of my colleagues with the way it's returning to us again. Just maybe a suggestion, if we're going to deal with act of violence, means drop verbal abuse, and maybe we could get there. And the definition of verbal abuse. So yeah, I'm not comfortable with this, and so hopefully we can get it right the next time.
Madam Chair, Paul Anderson, legal counsel, you indicated dropping active violence and verbal abuse. Is that what you stated?
No, I'm just saying, I think we're having a problem, or at least I'll speak just for myself, putting verbal in there, speech, certainly battery, and the other one, assault, that is violence. It's been mentioned that words are not violence. So I think that's the problem. We're throwing verbal or language or speech into this same pool as assault and battery, which certainly is not appropriate. And we could even argue that verbal, I've raised 8 kids and been to many, many games and seen, people that are really offensive in their language, but we have a right to be obnoxious. And so I just think there's too much in this section. I think that hangs it up. Now, this is not a body where we can just amend. It has to go back. So, but just a suggestion, what I'm having trouble with, I think has been reflected here today. You're mixing verbal or language or free speech in there with true violence, which is assault and battery.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, and we'll certainly look at that again.
Okay, is there anyone else in Carson City? Is there anyone down here in Las Vegas? Let's go to Assemblymember Watts.
Thank you, Chair. And I don't want to reiterate what my colleagues said. I just wanted to note that I agree with them, and I'm concerned about particularly the inclusion of the verbal abuse language as infringing on people's First Amendment rights. And I certainly understand where folks are coming from in terms of, wanting to prevent, kind of hostile environments, harassment, intimidation. But I do think that this wording is overly broad. And when you look at, I think the justified penalties for committing acts of violence against some of the officials and others of being, unable to participate for 180 days in the sport. Again, I think that applying that to anybody who says profane language directed at another person is more overly broad. And so I think the proper place for that is kind of under unsportsmanlike conduct and things like that I believe are also handled elsewhere, and dealing with violent activities should be really focused more on the physical force and the threats thereof. So thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Watts. Anyone else in Las Vegas before we go to Assemblymember Hafen on Zoom? Okay, Assemblymember Hafen, I saw you had your hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. And Mr. Anderson, thank you for presenting today. Since it seems like it's going to be coming back, if you could just bring back information on the current policies and procedures where, students, coaches, et cetera, can already be removed, just so we can kind of have a side-by-side comparison, or just during the interim between the meeting, you could email us the information, just so we could see what the changes are in comparison to what the current policies and procedures for removing students, coaches, individuals, et cetera, are. It would help me get a better understanding of what we're actually trying to get accomplished here. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Hafen.
Madam, just a comment if I can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, and I think if you recall from the last time we heard this, I think there's a distinction here that we're in a line we're crossing. So students that are participating, I think you can hold them to a higher standard. It's a privilege for them to be able to compete, et cetera, et cetera. And that conduct, misconduct, unsportsmanlike conduct is within the purview. Same thing with coaches, same thing with school district staff. They have an employer, they have rules. When you transfer that over and you say, is this what we want to see at high school sports and various things? No, we don't want to see it. I says, do people have the right to engage in that activity if they're not harming anybody else? They certainly do. And that's where I think if this was just on students participating, engaged in a privilege that can be taken away, if it was employed school staff, which have a different code of conduct, coaches, et cetera, but when you try to get over to the general public, I think you're crossing the line, and you can't cross those two sets of rules. If that helps, I don't know if it does, but I think you're talking apples and oranges.
And Madam Chair, Paul Anderson, if I could just comment. The last time we heard this, I understood that the concerns of the commission were, that spectators had been involved, were included with respect to this regulation. And so we specifically removed reference to spectators. And so this regulation does only include, I believe, the participants in our events, players, athletes, coaches, administrators, officials, those sorts of things. So am I incorrect in that, in your understanding of that?
Mr. Anderson, I think what I'm hearing from the committee members is that as the reg is written, the support for it isn't there. We are just going to defer this regulation and ask you to try again and come back with this reg for a third time. But please reach out to the committee members who have expressed concerns. I think everyone in the committee is sharing the same concerns. In addition, I know I had questions about how enforcement would work and how we stay consistent across the state with this. So I am going to go ahead and just defer this regulation again into the December meeting. I do want to thank you for jumping on last minute. I know you received the Zoom once you found out we were having this meeting. So I thank you for acting quickly and jumping on to answer our questions. With that, committee members, agenda item number 4 is complete. We can now move on to agenda item number 5, which is the designation of membership of the legislative interim committees. And here with us today is Roger Wilkerson, Deputy Director. Please to lead us through this next agenda item. Thank you so much for being here, Mr. Wilkerson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Roger Wilkerson, Deputy Director, for the record. In your packet, you'll see 2 recommended revised appointments for one body this afternoon, the Committee on Public Lands. In both cases, there was a request from the relevant caucuses to swap members serving on the committee. While that can be done directly by leadership for all other interim committees, that requires approval of the Legislative Commission for the Committee on Public Lands. The 2 members to be swapped are for Senator Cruz Crawford to replace Senator Bazina and for Senator Hansen to replace Senator Titus. Just as an additional note, there remains 1 vacant seat on this committee for a tribal representative. Staff have been in communication with the Intertribal Council for their recommendations, and the ITC intends to have their recommendations ready in time for the next Legislative Commission meeting. If you wish to proceed, the appropriate motion would be to approve these appointments. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. We have a first from Speaker Yeager, a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, members, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 6, appointment of members to committees and similar entities. Mr. Wilkerson, thank you for being here. This agenda item is yours as well.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Roger Wilkerson, Deputy Director, for the record. In your packet, you'll see recommended appointments for 3 bodies this afternoon: the Nevada Silver-Haired Legislative Forum, the Nevada Commission on Minority Affairs, and the Board of Directors for the Nevada Youth Legislature. I'm happy to provide further information if you wish, but in the interest of time, I'll leave that to your discretion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Members, any questions for Mr. Wilkerson regarding agenda item number 6? Okay, seeing none, I have a motion from Speaker Yeager. I have a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Nays, opposed, nay. Okay, motion carries. Thank you so much. And we are going to move on to, I believe, Mr. Wilkerson, we have you for the Nevada Silver-Haired Legislative Forum, and then next, the Commission on Minority Affairs, and last, the Nevada Youth Legislature. Can we? Okay, budget, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Roger Wilkerson, Deputy Director, for the final time this afternoon. In your packet, you'll see an exhibit listing proposed budgets by fiscal year and a number of approved meetings for each of the various interim legislative committees. These budgets and numbers of meetings are consistent with last biennium's approved budget and work programs, with the following exceptions. First, each budget was increased by about $2,500 in each year to cover the potential increased cost for airfare. Second, the Committee on Public Lands was given an additional meeting to reflect its graduation from subcommittee to full committee. And third, the Sunset Committee, which is no longer a subcommittee of the Legislative Commission, is now budgeted for meetings in its own right. Per NRS 218E.330, the Legislative Commission may approve additional meetings for interim legislative committees upon request if further meetings are required. As a note, per NRS 218E.325, interim legislative committees are authorized by law to begin meeting on November 1st of the odd-numbered year and must complete their work by August 31st of the even-numbered year. By approving the budget and work programs today, all interim committees will be able to begin meeting by November 1st for the first time since the legislature created the Joint Interim Standing Committee structure. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, or possibly phone a friend if necessary. And if you wish to proceed with these budgets and work programs, the appropriate motion would be to move to approve these budgets and work programs. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Wilkerson. And just for clarification, members, we are on agenda item number 7. I think I had us still on agenda item number 6 in my last comments, but agenda item number 7, and you guys have a printout of all of the budgets recommended for the interim committees. With that, I'd be looking, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Wilkerson?
Question.
Senator Titus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. So, Deputy Director Wilkerson, I just need some clarification. Looking at these budgets, and they seem reasonable in amount because it does take staffing and timing, buildings, et cetera, airfare. But for all of us, or most of these meetings are held during the year, the interim year, let's say 2026, which is what's listed. I'm just curious about the cost of these meetings when we're in session. And so the budget for 2027. And just, can you clarify where those costs are? Because those are the years we're in session typically, and even including January, say it's interim finance, et cetera. And so maybe that would be the exception that they would need some funding, but I'm curious about the other committees needing monies when we're in session.
Thank you, Senator Titus, for the question.
Senator Titus, our legal counsel to answer your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Legislative Counsel. And Senator Titus, in response to your question, I would just note that the amounts are for fiscal year rather than calendar year. And as the Deputy Director mentioned, these committees are authorized to meet beginning on November 1st of the odd-numbered year, running through August 31st of the even-numbered year. So typically the last 2 or 3 meetings of these committees would actually occur in the second fiscal year, so fiscal year 2027, which would begin on July 1st, 2026. So the amount is higher in the first year because the majority of the meetings will happen in the first fiscal year, but there will usually be 2 or 3 meetings still happening in the second fiscal year.
Perfect. Thank you for the explanation. That's all I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Committee members, any other questions?
I have one real quick.
Yes, Senator Daly.
If I can. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, and I know now that the Sunset Committee has graduated to its own standing committee, and I was looking at the amounts, and it's similar for many of the other standing committees, natural resources, ledge ops, et cetera, et cetera. So the dollars seem to be in line, and all of those committees have 6 meetings scheduled. So it seems to me there's budget there, I don't know. So what happens, because I know there's a lot of work, I know Assemblymember Bacchus is going to be the chair of that. There's a lot to get done. I know you have served on that committee yourself. 4 meetings seems a little compact to me, and it sounds like the numbers are already in line with the other committees that have 6. And so I'm just curious why we were at only 4. And can we adjust if we need to have another one? Would we have to get permission from the Legislative Commission? Obviously, if we're going to spend more money, we'd have to get that authorization as well.
Okay, Chair, is that
I'm
for
going
me?
to go. If you'd like to answer it, Mr. Wilkerson, please.
I was going to phone a friend and have our legal counsel, Asher Killian, take a stab at that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Asher Killian, Legislative Counsel. Yes, so that budget was, in dollar amount, was taken from some of the other committees that have more meetings. Obviously, this is the first time the Sunset Committee is a committee in its own right. So we may have over budgeted slightly for that committee just in case it does need to ask for additional meetings and to make sure it has the resources it needs to get through the biennium. We'll have better information going into next biennium once the Sunset Committee has existed in its own right for a full biennium to further adjust that amount in the future.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And I just ask, because I know in the past, I was the chair of the last interim. I know we went more than 4. Some of the questions and bringing some of the boards in, getting that scheduled is difficult, and just I was concerned about a compact schedule. But if we can ask for more meetings, I'll defer to the chair. She would have to make that decision. So.
Thank you, Senator. And I believe I chaired that committee, the interim before you, and we also had more meetings. So I think we will see this before us very soon. With that, seeing no other questions, I have a first from Speaker Yeager, a second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, next we are going to move on to agenda item number 8. We have the Chief of the Legislative Police here, Chief John Drew. I believe he is in Carson City to explain the proposed amendment to the regulation of the Legislative Commission concerning the use of grounds and parking areas. This item is one where, unlike administrative regulations, we can make changes before we approve the revised regulation. Chief Drew, when you're ready, please proceed with the summary of the proposed changes. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Chair. John Drew, Legislative Police, DREW. Really, the goal and the purpose of this is really simply to try to make the legislative grounds a safer place for people to assemble, demonstrate, rally, whatever it is, without fear of certain items that could be used as a weapon. And that's it. Even though it's rather lengthy, the explanation as to the reason behind it is really very short.
Thank you, Chief Drew. With that, I'm going to ask if our committee members have any questions. I'm going to start down here in Las Vegas. Okay, Assemblymember Hafen, I'm going to go to you before I head up north to see if you have any questions.
Not at this
Okay,
time.
let's go. Okay, let's go to Carson City. Are there any questions in Carson City?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think there's at least 2 of us for sure. And thank you for being here, Mr. Drew, and appreciate the wonderful protection and services that we get being here as legislators. I have a question first and then a comment. How many instances are we seeing a real increase in concerns that have brought this about? Have people been injured at some of these rallies and protests with objects?
John Drew, Legislative Police. We haven't seen a huge increase in this. We probably had more instances of violence, if you will, assault, et cetera, when we started about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and we started with those demonstrations here. But recently, Probably in the last 2 years, there's probably only been 3 cases, and that was basically an assault. One was brandishing a firearm, but that actually occurred in front of the demonstration and not on legislative grounds. So Carson City Sheriff's Office handled that particular one. So like I said, we're not really seeing an increase. This is almost, in my mind, like preventative medicine to make sure that if we do start seeing that increase, that we have some tools already available to help us with it.
And Madam Chair, if I could just follow up real quick.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. So this is difficult because I don't want to express displeasure with this ask, but I just feel it's very broad, and I appreciate that the intent is there to keep everyone safe, not just the legislators, not just the staff, but the public. But I don't know if that this is how we're going to accomplish that. I think some existing provisions, you know better than I, the law of deadly weapons. It could be this computer. Like as I walk through a crowd, I could throw my computer. My purse is a lethal weapon at times. So I just think it's hard as I look at the laundry list of items to prohibit. I don't know. I think we create more criminals than we maybe satisfy the need for it, because we don't have, fortunately, as many circumstances that would maybe warrant this, but I get it's preventative. So that I do appreciate. So at this point, I've got some real concerns about the broadness and if it just will create some unintended consequences. But thank you for your intent.
Okay, I believe we had another question in the north.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Titus here. And again, first and foremost, thank you for, I understand the intent is to keep everybody safe, whether it is our constituents visiting us and us ourselves as elected officials. So absolutely appreciate the intent. My concern, however, is the broadness of scope of the unintentional consequences of this, the enforcement of it, and the folks who literally are just walking by. Some of the things that it's such a broad brush of things that is like, oh my goodness, as opposed to any threatening, physical. Some of the stuffs are already illegal, but you're listing any toy replica, fake, or prop firearms unless it's a fluorescent color or transparent. Nevada Day parade is coming, and a lot people will have some of these things unintentionally. And I know that it's your job to keep us safe, or I just am concerned about the broadness of this. So somebody's carrying a possession or using a cane walker or device and assisting, but maybe not, maybe they brandish their cane or something. I mean, I just think you've gone over the top of what is reasonable consideration. And I know you're trying to keep us protected, believe me. And so I just, as written, I think it's too broad, and I just can't support it the way it's presented. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in Carson City before I come back to Las Vegas? Okay, I'm going to Speaker Yeager next.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here. I just had maybe a clarifying question. I'm looking at, I guess it's subsection 7 about a warning being given before enforcement of the provisions in subsection 5. So I know there are a few different options in that section. There's oral communication, there's amplified announcement, there's signs posted. And so I guess the question would be, if you're anticipating a demonstration or a protest on the legislative grounds, how do you think you would go about notifying members? And then, would there be some discretion given? Because I imagine, folks might not know because this is a new policy. So if you can talk a little bit about that. I think I understand the concerns of my colleagues, but I guess just want some assurances that there's going to be some discretion there, and we're not going to be creating criminals of people who unknowingly bring something onto the legislative grounds.
Absolutely, Mr. Speaker. A lot of what we do is going to be based off observation. And a lot of it is, how is that individual behaving in the first place? But even our normal protocol is going to be what we call voluntary compliance, to go to that person and explain to them, look, there's an assembly going on here. We're not sure you really want to bring that baseball bat to this assembly. You know, it's not necessary. You're more than welcome to participate, but could you kindly put the bat back in your car? That's going to be our first approach to doing that. And if the individual is absolutely adamant, and again, based off of their behavior, and like you said, using some discretion, it's a misdemeanor citation at that point. And it's not necessarily making them a criminal. It's just a misdemeanor citation. Hopefully that answers your question, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair. It does answer my question, and I certainly understand what you're trying to do here. I think this is as much about the protection of other people who happen to be on the legislative grounds. I mean, you know, unfortunately, we're in a day today as legislators that, you know, we sort of sign up for the risk that comes with being in public office and being in the public eye, but certainly individuals who want to show up on the legislative grounds and protest, either protest something or be there in support of a policy. I think it's important that we keep them safe. So, you know, in my mind, I'm supportive of this because it's as much about protecting other members of the public from risks as it is about protecting us. So thanks for bringing this forward, and thank you for the time, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Speaker Yeager. And I think one of the things we forgot is it was mentioned, you know, members of the public, constituents, ourselves, but let's not forget the staff that works at the LCB as well. It's as much as protecting them as well. So thank you. With that, I would be looking for a motion to approve the regulations concerning the use of legislative grounds and parking. I have a first from Speaker Yeager, second from Senator Nguyen. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
If I could have my nays raise their hand. I have Assemblymember Hansen, Assemblymember Hafen, Senator Hansen, and Senator Titus. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, members, that brings us to our next agenda item, which I plan to roll till the December meeting. We are still working on some language. So agenda item number 9 is being rolled, and we are jumping to agenda item number 10, which is our last agenda item before public comment. With that, we have our General Counsel, Kevin Powers, who will provide us with a report regarding litigation for agenda item number 10. Mr. Powers, please begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Kevin Powers, General Counsel, LCB Legal Division. I have only one case to report on today where there are new developments. The case is Lombardo versus Nevada Commission on Ethics, which is currently pending in the Carson City District Court. In that case, Governor Lombardo was found to have violated the Ethics on Ethics, found several willful violations, and imposed $20,000 worth of civil penalties. Governor Lombardo then petitioned for judicial review in the First Judicial District Court. As part of that petition, Governor Lombardo's attorneys challenged the constitutionality of the power of the Legislative Commission to appoint 4 members of the Commission on Ethics. And so because that constitutional challenge was raised, LCB Legal was authorized to intervene in the case on behalf of the legislature to defend the constitutionality of the legislative enactments and appointments under the ethics law. The most recent development is on September 23rd, 2025, the Commission on Ethics approved a stipulated agreement to resolve the ethics complaint and the litigation. Under the stipulated agreement, Governor Lombardo will stipulate to 1 non-willful violation of the ethics law and make a $5,000 payment to the State General Fund. The pending litigation in the Carson City District Court will be dismissed, and then the matter will be concluded. So that is the extent of the ethics report. That case will now be considered closed. I'm certainly open for any questions.
Members, any questions for Mr. Powers? Seeing none in Las Vegas, Mr. Hafen, members in Carson City, are there any questions for Mr. Powers? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much, Mr. Powers, for being here and for giving us that update. Committee members, we are on to our second public comment, item number 11, which is public comment. If there are Any members down here in Las Vegas, members of the public wishing to give public comment, please approach the witness table. We will take members in Las Vegas. We will then move to Carson City and wrap up with the telephone lines. I would like to remind everyone that before beginning your testimony, please identify yourself and please spell your name for our record. And you can begin.
Thank you, Chair and honorable members. My name is Jean Coquilla, Coquilla, homeowner, small business owner, and daughter of an 88-year-old disabled Air Force veteran. Nevada's homeowner association laws under Chapter 116 are outdated and allow overreach that harms seniors, veterans, and families. Texas, Florida, and California have already enacted reforms, and Nevada deserves the same fairness. My proposal, the Nevada Homeowner Fairness and Communication Act, costs the state $0. A full draft bill has been written, and I will submit it to the commission immediately after my remarks. It requires every HOA to have a written internal dispute resolution policy, provide 10 business days before any lien or foreclosure, pause collections during disputes, and acknowledge all homeowner payments and correspondence. It also requires HOAs to post foreclosure sale notices 90, 60, and 30 days prior to and the day of the sale on the subject property. This proposal modernizes NRS 116 communication standards and can be implemented through existing real estate division authority with no fiscal impact. By requiring written internal dispute resolution, we reduce unnecessary complaints and litigation, freeing division resources and restoring public trust. These are simple, no-cost guardrails that strengthen transparency and accountability for the thousands of Nevadans, including 55,000 living with Alzheimer's within 3,700 HOA communities in Nevada. This protection means stability, fairness, and dignity. So I respectfully request that the Legislative Commission refer this measure to the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs for the study and pre-filing in the 227 session. This falls squarely within the Commission's duty to ensure regulatory clarity and fairness under Chapter 116. Thank you for your time and for protecting the citizens who built and defended this state.
Thank you for being here and for your testimony. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to give public comment? Okay, seeing none.
There is not.
Thank you, Senator. AVH, is there anyone on the telephone line?
Thank you, Chair. The public lines are open and working, but there are no callers to provide public comment at this time.
Thank you. Okay, our last agenda item is adjournment. So seeing no further business, our next Legislative Commission meeting is scheduled for December. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, committee members.
Thank you, everyone.